E3. It's the biggest week of the year for games, and this time in the bonus round, we're giving you the playbook to the console war. First, Microsoft and the Xbox 360. Is Gears of War 2 set to dominate the show? How does Microsoft respond to the success of Nintendo and the Wii?
I'd be surprised if there wasn't a price drop announced close to or at E3.
And are there other third-party exclusives in the works?
My guess is that the big stuff that's going to ship this year, we've probably already seen.
Find out next, only here in the bonus round E3 preview. Hey everybody, welcome to the bonus round. I'm Jeff Keighley, and in the bonus round, the biggest names in the video game industry get together to talk about the issues that matter most. So joining me is Stephen Totilo, a reporter for MTV News and the proprietor of the MTV Multiplayer blog. Great to have you here, Stephen.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me here.
Also, a frequent guest on the bonus round, 2 months running here. It's Nguyen Kroll, the general editor for technology at Newsweek and the editor of the Level Up blog at Newsweek. You can check it out at blog.newsweek.com/blog/levelup. Nguyen, great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Jeff.
Did you mention my URL?
No, it's I guess it's multiplayer.mtv.com.
Good man,
Steven.
good man.
And finally, the man with the simplest URL on the panel today from Kotaku.com. It's the editor-in-chief, Brian Crescenti. Brian,
hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great to have you here. So let's get right into it with the Xbox 360. Things have been leaking like crazy over the past couple weeks about Microsoft's E3 strategy. Stephen, what are you expecting? What's going to be the big headline from Microsoft at E3? What do they need to do?
Well, I think we saw some of the headlines already, because I think we saw Gears of War 2, and I expect that to be the biggest game of the year for them. And actually, we saw some question marks that I don't know if they'll be answered at E3, maybe going to be answered a little bit afterward, regarding games like Fable 2, Banjo-Kazooie, which raised, I think, more questions than answers when it came out. So we know a lot of what they're going to be bringing out for the rest of the year, but we don't really know how those games are going to pan out. So it's a little bit different for them, and that a lot of their cards are on the table.
Some of their cards are on the table, but Nguyen, there was, I think, a story in CVG in Europe that said Microsoft might have 2 surprise games for later in 2008. Do you expect that there's some news at E3 that's going to affect the end of this year for Xbox 360?
I'm sure Microsoft is keeping something in reserve. No one really shows everything before E3. But my guess is that the big stuff that's going to ship this year, we've probably already seen. I think it's going to be Gears of War 2. They've certainly been hinting that Halo Wars is not going to ship this year.
That's next year.
I would expect that would be next year.
Fable, I think that's an open question mark if that's going to make this year.
I know you've got a bet with Peter Molyneux.
I do have a bet
about this year.
$100 on the line, and Peter guaranteed me at GDC it was going to come out this year. When I saw him at the May showcase, he was a little less certain about that, so we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, we'll see if that's going to come out. Brian, when you look at Gears of War 2, which is the big ticket game for the holidays for Xbox 360, is that enough for this platform? I mean, I think it's going to it's going to service the existing Gears of War fan base, but is that really what the platform needs right now?
Well, I think Gears of War 2 is going to keep current owners happy, and I think that it will attract some new fans. But I think what we might see at E3, judging by some of the leaks and rumors we've heard, is maybe a bigger push towards casual gaming.
Right.
Like Lips, this karaoke thing that might be coming out, and rumor of perhaps some sort of motion control device for some games. I think that what they're probably going to try to do is satisfy their current user base, but then also expand maybe in Wii territory.
Which is interesting that they've talked about how they wanted to do that for Xbox 360. Yet the 360 sales are about the same where Xbox was over the same span of life. So they haven't really expanded beyond the hardcore. Stephen, you guys broke the story on the Multiplayer blog about this supposed Newton motion controller that might come out. Are they really just going to rip off the Wiimote?
Well, I mean, I think there's only so many ways that you can make a remote-shaped, motion-sensitive controller, and so if that's the direction they're going to go, I mean, the Nintendo Entertainment System controller with the D-pad and the 2 buttons wasn't the first and last of its kind, and the DualShock or the the original PlayStation controller wasn't the first and last of its kind. They want to create a motion-sensitive remote. As long as they can find a way to not violate Nintendo's patents, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they bring out. And there's clearly a lot of interest in controllers that people are less afraid to pick up, and that Xbox controller is still intimidating to a lot of people. And now that their price point is getting down closer to the Wii, now's the time for them to do that, right?
But in fairness to Microsoft, I mean, they'll say that in their hardware and devices group that they had done motion control well
Back
before
in the day of
before
Sidewinders.
Exactly, before it was even an apple in a Wada's eye. So, I mean, yes, they're going to rip it off. I think, there are rumors that Sony is looking at some sort of break apart
Right.
DualShock type controller that has gesture built in. The challenge for both of them, both Sony and Microsoft, is that they didn't ship their machines with that day one, so they're going to have to prove it out and then get third parties to jump on. And my guess is third parties are going to be slow to do that. And when you look, this is something I said on your show before, Microsoft doesn't have the heritage at making the kinds of games that can drive peripheral sales like that. Sony does, so I would expect they might have some more success. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Microsoft to make a hit out of whatever the Newton turns out to be.
Because we have seen with Guitar Hero that the days of thinking the peripherals that don't come packed with the machine can't sell are over. You can put out a really large extra controller with a game, and if it's cool enough, people will buy it.
The point I think that you guys are making is it's all about the software. It's like what games are going to support this motion controller. Brian, do you have any sense of, what does Microsoft have in its back pocket that's going to be the answer to Wii Sports and all these great Wii games?
Yeah, no, that's I think the big question. Banjo-Kazooie, there's talk that might use it. There's been talk of some other games. There's a rumor, I think actually Totilo may have mentioned that rumor on his post or the post on their site about Halo.
I can't comment on rumors and speculation, right?
But they are obviously shopping it around to studios and trying to get people on board. I would think that because Nintendo has sort of already proven that that's a viable route. You could say that Nintendo sort of beta tested it for them. Not to say that they haven't succeeded.
So they're just going to get ports of Wii games now? What do you think we're going to see for this?
But they're doing avatars, maybe.
Well, that's a good question, though, because if you're looking even at Nintendo sales, what has really capitalized on the Wii Remote? And it's the game that came with it, which is a really casual sports game.
And first parties are they're having success with the Wii, but the third parties aren't really.
But even their first party games, it's not like Battalion Wars and Fire Emblem and Endless Ocean like Set the World Afire. So it's a very specific style, a very casual kind of mini-game, chopped up kind of game, and we've seen with Wii Fit that it doesn't even have to be motion sensitive. It can be, a balance board. It's just something that if it has a certain innate appeal that Nintendo seems to be able to identify and then market, it can sell the Wii experience. So in some cases, it may be a mistake for Microsoft and Sony if they're strictly chasing motion control, because with Wii Fit, we've seen that it's not motion control that defines the Wii experience anymore.
Just unique peripheral.
Unique peripheral, and there's something that's sort of casual and sort of speaks to a fantasy that people have of something they could see themselves doing for 5 minutes without feeling too stupid being in front of a TV.
Ports aren't necessarily a bad thing, though. We saw the first month sales for Boom Blox, only 60,000 units, despite the fact that it was in the market longer than Wii Fit was. Riccatello has basically said, well, it's still early, that's a good number.
Boom Blox for Newton, are you calling it right here?
Well, I'm just saying, if I were Microsoft, honestly, given the reviews that game got, assuming that they may come out, Sony and Microsoft may come out with motion control at the same time, I'd lock that up. No, I'm saying Boom Blox locked that up semi-exclusively because it got an A+, I think, from EGM. You know what I'm saying? So clearly the core is responding to it. You do that with next-gen graphics, and make it exclusive for it, bring out the avatars and whatever. Maybe there's an opportunity to sort of reinvigorate that franchise. And I'm sure EA would jump at the opportunity.
Absolutely, but do you think is this going to help Microsoft get to the mainstream? Because certainly they're looking now at the Wii outselling them 4-1 every month. Brian, do you think is this what Microsoft needs to be doing, or does it feel a little bit like putting a Band-Aid on a problem that is much deeper than just...
No, get Grand Theft Auto for the Wii. So,
but it's not moving hardware.
No, but I don't know. It sounds like everybody's worried for Microsoft. If you own an Xbox, I think that you've been getting fantastic
the existing
games
audience
for a while.
is great, but you look at the sales last month; they were in third place in terms of sales, and I think some people feel like they may have stalled, and that Xbox Live was great when it came out a couple of years ago, but now it's like Live hasn't really evolved, and you see Sony evolving their service, and they're satisfying the existing hardcore gamers, and like everyone loves the hardcore games that are coming out, but there's this obviously wider audience which they completely missed, which when they were first talking about 360, that's what they were talking about, is why the console was white instead of black, is that they were going for these mainstream consumers. And Guy, they've completely missed that audience, right?
Well, the challenge for them is even if, let's say, they get down to the same price point at the Wii, $250,